Okay, guys, now this is the potential future of the mudwings, which I think will be a very bright future. Start off with everyone's favorite subject, economics. Maybe not that guy's favorite subject. First of all, their sleep bunks would have to be made out of ceramics since, I'm sorry, no one really likes it when a flood comes and all your mud house just collapses in on itself while you're sleeping, or it rains a whole lot and it just collapses in on itself. I mean, no one really likes that. And listen, I'm sorry, but there has to be some level of safety. Period. I don't care. Second of all, bricks do well in desert because wood cracks, bricks don't. Wood cracks when the wood is in too dry of an environment. And it's cheap too, since this comes from the lowest born mudwings houses. And furthermore, having this to sell to the sandwings, surely that won't form a economic alliance with a superpower that's about to rise up. Surely not. Other uses for bricks. Surely Skywings are going to love this when their industry grows and bricks fuel industry. Like fire bricks are used for ovens and forges. And Skywings probably are going to like having a whole lot of ceramic for their forges, a whole lot of bricks, which make it easier, and it's just overall smart to use bricks or something like that for ovens or for forges. It just makes sense, and it's cheaper, so they'll likely sell a whole bunch of bricks to the Skywings, which I think you can read the text. Loads of trees, tightly compacted, that's a good thing. Well, not tightly compacted, because they're not as tightly compacted as the rainwings trees, to where they can't really move it around, not to mention the water actually helps them move it around since trees float, at least most of them. The only real problem, and it's wet, so no real risk of complete total annihilation from a firestorm, and not to mention that it makes it easier to haul and all that. Only real problem is it makes it harder to store wood, but nonetheless, they'll likely export a whole lot of wood, believe it or not. Rice and soybeans grow insanely well in swamps. I don't think you have any idea how well rice and soybeans grow in swamps. They could be spamming out these crops like, I don't even know what to compare it to. Not to mention all that grass for mud bricks, which could be sold to the sandwings since it doesn't rain much over there. It's just overall good, and rice and soybeans is a lot of food, too, to sell to other nations. Well, also, they have more yum-yums, like alligator, crawfish, ducks, and fish, especially catfish. Ooh, my addictions might have took it over my channel. What? I like alligator tail and catfish. Don't persecute me for that. Please. Okay? Oh, wait. Hold on, what else, Scrib? Materials for iron are available, unlike some other places. Like, they have lots of materials for iron, really. It's just going to be bog iron, which might be brittle and all that, but they still probably have a decent steel-making industry that can keep up with other tribes. And couple this with the fact that they don't have very deep water, so they can just pile up some dirt, or they can just build a little wood platform and put dirt on top of it to prevent it from catching on fire, or just find a high spot in the swamp, and they'll have a perfectly decent thing to forge on. Seawings can't do this because they're like 2 miles underneath the water, so it's still going to be slightly less efficient than other tribes, but still pretty good. Geography, they actually have very good. I mean, look at this. Food, bricks somewhat, bricks for building an adobe, wood, food, fire bricks for the rainwings, which is useful because they don't want their place to catch on fire, tools due to tax, meat, seafood, import iron ore from seawings, cloth from the sandwings, bricks for furnaces, wood, and tools and wood to the seawings. A load of it. They have really good trade maps. Close with the sandwings, and the Seawings, allowing for them good trade with their partners. I mean, they're super close, and they can just skip the Skywings terrace and stuff by just going through this little patch right here. And sure, they might have to cross to trade with the Icewings, but and the Nightwings, but they're so close, they can make very efficient use of this proximity and where they are, especially if that area was theirs. It might be disputed, however. I don't know if it is. And it's really useful in general. See, look, and I mean, Skywings love they're mountains, and they live up north, and they have lots of territory. The rainwings don't really like wide open spaces if we think about this logically, right? So, if they can cross through this area right here, they could literally just travel right through that little area to skip terrace from the skywings. It really wouldn't be that hard. And that area, if they do own it, would allow for, well, more population. They could spread their pop out more and not overuse that one little area. And coupled with that, that would also be very useful for collecting resources and trading with the Nightwings. It'd be easier to skip. And even if it's disputed, they still couldn't tariff it. Not to mention this, but especially if they own it. Holy cow, pop boom. Remember what I said about having all that food, plus mudwings lay lots of eggs, and having access to medicine from the rainwings pretty quickly is pretty darn useful if you want to grow. With that being said, there are some problems with their geography. During a war, which side do I join? Which will give me the best benefits? That's one small problem. Trapped at the other sides, decide they hate them. They'd be pretty easy to blockade. Look, sandwings right here. The rainwings could go over here. The safe harbor's blocked off. They are trapped. And they're right next to rainwings, which are probably going to be a military superpower. So not exactly the best geography if you want to win a war. But then again, I mean, rainwings can't really invade because they'd get themselves covered in mud and couldn't go invisible if they went into the Mud Kingdom. Now, you might be saying, oh, I said trade is bad and all that. It really isn't, unless you're over-reliant on said trade. And mudwings have a very decent economy that's very solid, and they can supply literally everything they need to keep up with the other tribes within their own kingdom. Even the seawing, like the seawing's whole problem is they can't get metal. The mudwings can get metal and can even forge it into weapons in their own territory if they have to, or tools, or anything that requires metal. They have access to glass and literally anything they could ever need, really. So they're pretty decent. Now onto military. Well, first of all, the first weapons that I could see really working is the Gunendag. Simple, cheap, you can spike stuff, you can club stuff. They're very effective, they're very cheap and easy to make, they're real simple to use. You can cut with them. I mean, really, what's wrong with the Gunendag? Plus, it uses very little metal, so, well, that is just in general good because of the way their economy is. Less metal equals more money and more profit. It means you can supply more troops with it. Next up, spike clubs. Very similar. Except for this one's more just bashy instead of, you can't really get as finessed with it. But a spiked club is really simple, really cheap. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it. Next up, mauls. I mean, mauls are devastators against armor. They're just basically heavy wooden hammers. They're real cheap. The two little Iron Mans are probably not going to use that much money. And I mean, to be fair, a maul is just overall cheap. So what's wrong with it? Also, not to mention that, knives. I mean, useful sidearms. They're very useful for utility and stuff like that. They do take a little bit more metal than let's say a maul might. Well, it depends on what sort of knife actually, really, because there's lots of different ones. But knives are useful as a sidearm and are pretty darn useful for utility. So nothing really wrong with a knife. Spears, I mean, their spears appear to be hooked if we're taking this literally from the graphic novel, assuming that is a actual cannon shape. You could hook stuff. Not to mention spears have long reach, which is really useful. And spears are cheap. Easy to supply their troops with. Solid option, really. Armor. Mudwings are probably going to actually wear full plate armor because of the Rainwings' threat with their Venom Smith. And not to mention that fact, coupled with several other useful abilities that all this armor would provide them, and coupled with the fact that they'd actually have an easier time moving around with it than other tribes because they are larger and stronger, apparently, according to the Guide to the Dragon World. Here's where I'll probably get yelled at. I think Mudwings are actually one of the best militaries as far as logistics are concerned. Like, if we think about this, look, food, I mean, they're not picky eaters. Clay is proof in of its finest, which is really useful because you can eat literally anything, go anywhere, eat anything. Unlike some other picky tribes, they will survive just about anywhere. Not to mention that, but being able to carry stuff, which is really useful. They would be able to carry much more weight, which is, well, useful overall. I mean, you don't want to be able to only carry just a little bit of food. It allows them to go further. Not to mention that, but they're more comfortable in unusual climates compared to some other tribes, like the sandwings hate cold. Mudwings are more cold resistant than sandwings and rainwings are, and are more heat resistant than icewings, which is a good spot to be in. Really, as far as logistics are concerned, they can breathe fire if warm enough, but here's the thing. It has to be pretty darn cold. I mean, have you seen mountaintops? Clay could breathe fire up there. So, I mean, this mountaintops being so cold, it's probably going to have to be pretty cold to actually prevent them from breathing fire. Okay, now everyone's least favorite subject, politics. Internal politics and external politics. Well, for starters, they'd likely form a very strong alliance with the Skywings. They literally have what the other side wants and needs. War buddies in the pre-war of the Sandwing succession means that they would be good allies from the start and the get-go. They already knew each other very well. And look, they have literally what the other side wants. Not to mention, due to being war buddies and having the right materials to trade with the other tribe, what the other tribe wants, well, to answer that, it just leads to loads of cultural exchange and loads of trade, which is overall a very good thing to have. And I mean, who really doesn't want that? Because that'll make them rich, very rich, as a matter of fact, and money is pretty darn good. Sandwings, strong economic relationship. I mean, cloth is pretty useful, it's not necessary, but the Sandwings have a bunch of stuff that they would buy from Mudwings. The only problem with this is the Sandwings' political climate is, well, not very good, so that might delay trade for a little while due to not being able to trust Sandwings to honor their trade due to the whole Vulture thing that's been going on, and Vulture starting an internal terrorist feud against Queen Thorn. Might discourage trade for a little bit until Queen Thorn eventually gets the whole thing back together, which will be very useful for the Sandwings when they do form an alliance. Okay, and not to mention that fact, but also the fact they have what each other wants. And next up, the Rainwings. Okay, weapons in exchange for medicines. The Rainwings have lots of herbs that could be really useful medically wise. Problem with this is the whole stereotypes of Rainwings being lazy until Glory can really prove that wrong, which might take a few years, and to retrain her whole tribe to stop being lazy. Yeah, it might take a little while for trade. And maybe even the Mudwings could do controlled burns for Rainwings to prevent a little thing known as arson completely wiping out their kingdom. Not to mention that they also have mud huts, which are pretty nice, actually, in the rainforest. They actually have these clay huts, which would be pretty nice in the rainforest because durability, and fire resistance. You really don't want to live in a place that's literally full of fire material and your house just catches on fire. You want a little bit of a safe zone. Firewalls could be built, berms, and stuff. Okay, next up for the Icewings. Icewings would probably trade gold in exchange for forge material and food and bricks. Well, that's actually a pretty decent trade. Pretty solid. The only problem is they would get tariffed for going through the Sandwing Kingdom, and also the fact Icewing culture is stupidly, isolationists, to say the least, currently, but likely they would eventually start to become good trade allies. And, crossing through Sand Snorter territory, snow, I'm starting to sound like winter. Well, yeah, that's what winter does call a lot of sandwings. Okay, back to the topic. Off with the joke. Yeah, to be honest, it would be delayed for a little bit. Wouldn't be the most solid trade, but would still be very viable to trade with the Icewings. Now, Seawings. Literally, look at this. They have what the other side wants, or for the Mudwings and tools for the Seawings. Small problem. Much like Icewings, not war buddies, so not acquainted allies. The Icewings were not war buddies, which might take a little might increase time to get acquainted with the other side, and this would likely lead to some, trade arguments and that stuff, and some other problems early on, which, could be solved, but it would take a while to really fix the whole issues. And couple this with the fact that Seawings live underwater, there's really going to be hard communication and all that. And, there are a few other things that would make it difficult due to language barriers and stuff. And, look, leads to some fighting and trade arguments, but eventually Seawings will likely become very good allies with the Mudwings because they're how close they are and they can supply what the other side wants. What about Pentalon tribes? Okay, there are a few issues that have to get solved. First problem being, you have to cross this, which would give quite a bit of delay, and, well, I'm sorry, but I don't want to pay whatever number of money it is to export, which is a bit of a problem, which would make stuff more expensive. Well, yeah, wonder what she would like to buy. What could I sell for big butts? They've never really known Pentalon dragons, so they wouldn't really know what to sell them. I mean, to be fair, same with Nightwings and Rainwings, but which would be a problem for them. But still, it's a huge problem when you don't know what the other side really wants. It might take a little while to get adapted. Now, if they do, well, Hivewings would likely get wood for tree stuff, bricks, and iron ore in exchange for cloth and various types of knowledge. And also, Mudwings could be a trade for seeds. Well, why? Because, no, not Minecraft seeds, tree seeds. Because they want to get their tree stuff back so they can make their hives. And, well, planting trees is useful, although they would probably trade with the Leafwings more than the Mudwings and the Rainwings. But these guys would still form a strong trade relationship because Mudwings have materials the Hivewings really could use. And bricks are a really solid option to build houses out of. Now, Leafwings, they probably are going to sell Mudwings food, maybe some tree seeds and some like medicine, and Mudwings would probably trade weapons and stuff like that. Because we all know Mudwings, you don't get in the way between them and their food. You really just don't. Couple this with the fact that bricks, once again, bricks are just solid. Same with weapons and tools that Mudwings have. They'd become close trade partners. Silk and the glowy stuff. Stringy stuff, I mean, and weather protection, because Silkwings are really good at that, because they have literally natural radar. Well, I mean, yeah, in exchange for weapons and pottery and various sorts of ceramics, it's pretty good trade option, actually. Now, what about trade with the edgelords of the future, assuming they break off from the Rainwings? Thanks for, well, lots of tools in exchange for knowledge, lots of resources, and they have some resources the Rainwings really can't give the Nightwings. Also, protection, since the Rainwings still don't have their army in the best of shape right now. So, leads to them being good buddies. Well, I mean, this has one problem. It would prevent Glory from getting in control with the Nightwings that left. Glory may be closer, but that's not all really the problem when the Mudwings can really give them everything the Nightwings really need to reset their civilization. Likely, Nightwings become closer to the Mudwings than to the actual Rainwings just because of this fact. Even though it's a little bit more expensive, the Mudwings sell stuff they really need that the Rainwings really couldn't sell. And internal politics, which we sadly know very little about. Other than, the Queen literally decided to run to a literally freezing place nearly butt naked, like Duluth underwear commercials. Okay, Big Dummy, which is not very good, but to be fair, as long as she doesn't make too many more decisions and her kingdom seems pretty stable, so she probably hasn't made too many stupid decisions, yeah, they'd probably do pretty decently as far as internal politics. The one other problem is they really would have to change a lot of their policies in order to get into this trade superpower and manufacturing superpower, but overall, it's pretty good. Final point is culture. We'll talk about culture a little bit. Okay, when they hatch, they are left out by themselves, which teaches survival skills, which is good for the military, and teamwork, which is very important. And, not to mention this, but growing up together helps learn about your strengths and weaknesses. They could organize their little groups, their hatching groups. It really makes it closer. It gives the disadvantage of one dies, the rest become less overall capable. But this isn't as big of a problem as you might think because they can replace them with outsiders that had their groups died. Helps with organization, really. It does, because then they already know what they have to do, what each one's strongest at, and all that, which being organized is in general a very good thing for economics. Each member of a troop can help provide for each other, making life a little bit easier, which is in general pretty darn useful. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you could really do with this. Overall, it's just really general, but only the biggest problem is, lazy members of the troop will weaken it. If one of the troop is not very capable, the others will have an obligation to help them, which brings down the whole troop, which is not good. Okay, and bye! Have